Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to this workshop. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, as you can see, a little change of scenery today. There's a lot going on in my house today, so I'm not able to record in front of my bookcase as I usually do. So just a sneak peek at my work area for you guys and all the stickers. And in case you're wondering, this is one of the cabinets I'm always talking about that's full of books. I have another one right on the other side of the wall. Lots of books. But let's get into it. This is my March reading wrap up. I read a total of 15 books this past month. And I will say that's one more than I read in February. So yay! Woo! But of course I didn't reach my goal, which was what, 18 books? 20 books? Something like that, right? It was something outrageous. As usual, because I'm an outrageous person, right? So let's get into it. First book that I finished reading this month was Heated Rivalry. This was a carryover from February, I believe. I liked Game Changer more than Heated Rivalry. I think this one has the grace of being faster paced, in my opinion. I liked that we're going through the time of this, of their relationship, right? But it wasn't as emotional or moving to me as Kip and Scott's was, unfortunately. I like the pacing, but the characterization, character depth, it just wasn't there for me until about halfway through the book. The first half of it is clearly just smut. I mean, it's them having lots of sex 90% of the time. And I get it. There is some nuances there. They're both struggling with their attraction with each other. They're both struggling with their sexuality because, for Romanov, I'm really bad with their names. He's Russian, and of course, in Russia, being a homosexual is a no-go, right? And then for Hudson? Why can't I remember their names? I'm terrible. I audiobooked them. But that's what I mean. They weren't as memorable as Scott and Kip. And no, I haven't seen the Heated Rivalry TV show. So maybe they do the nuances a little bit better in the show, since you have a visual impact versus in the book. But for me, this book kind of fell short with the characterization and the character depth because 90% of it's just them punishing themselves by having sex with each other. And there were, some parts of it that were slightly degrading in a way. I'm guessing it was supposed to be kind of like a kink, which I get that. But because it lacked that kind of emotional depth, it was lacking for me. So it was okay. I'm probably not going to continue the series. It's just, Game Changer was great. I loved Game Changer. I just don't need that much smut in my life. And I guess maybe some of the other books are better. A lot of people tell me that they are, but I have a huge TBR of books that I'm more interested in reading. Maybe I'll get back to it, maybe I won't. We'll see. After that, I read The Clock to Terminus. This is book 3 in the Clock 2 series. Phenomenal. 4.5 stars, and it loses that half star because I am trying really hard not to think about those time paradoxes, and I can't help it. I'm always thinking about those time paradoxes. I'm just like, but wait. It's still a good story. It's phenomenal, actually. I love how it goes back and forth between the past and the present, and it's really fluid. It really flows. It's smooth. It's not really confusing. It's just the time paradoxes, because I'm that person who always thinks the time paradoxes. Just like, but wait, But I can still enjoy the book, and I like how everyone comes together at the end of the book as well. I think it's a really, really good story. I loved the characterization, the character growth, and I like how the characters have grown in this novel and how everything just kind of comes to an end here. I think it is really phenomenal, honestly. It was a really good conclusion to a trilogy. Like, book 1 was like kind of like but of course book 2 really picked everything up, tied up a lot of loose ends, really created a grounded story, and then book 3 just kind of blew me away. After that, I read The Robin and the Oak Throne. I will say this. It was better than the first book, because at least there was more action, there was more happening, you know? It wasn't just a whole lot of yearning going on and sexual tension. It had way more story development, I think, stronger characterization, and a better pace for the story. My biggest hindrance with this book is the amount of smut. I don't like the smut in this book. I really don't. As you can tell, smut's not really my thing. I don't mind smut in a story. It bothers me when it just becomes the focus and core of the story, and when it takes away from the story. And here, I think it did take away from the relationship between Ren and the Holly King. That's just what I'm going to call him right now. I think it did take away from their relationship a little bit, because they do have a lot of really good moving scenes in this book where they're really opening up to each other and really trusting one another, you know? And I really thought those scenes were really well done, you know? Again, stronger character dynamics in this book. And I think, like, the dirty talk between them, it really bothered. It was cringy, in my opinion. But again, I'm not really someone who likes smut that much. And in my case, you know, some of the smutty scenes between them, like, they have some good sex scenes where it's not cringy and where you get to see that emotional impact really resonate. You know, everything that they've unpacked, you know, the bond, the way that their bond has grown together. Really get to see the emotional impact of it. So those sex scenes were well done, but for the most part, a lot of them were just smutty, cringy, dirty talk scenes that I just didn't care for, honestly. But I thought it was a great story, and by the end, I was totally emotionally invested, because Lorcan pissed me off. Fuck him. He really, really just pissed me off, and I just wanted to jump in the book and rescue Ren. I mean, I was angry. I was angry when I got to that part of the book, the ending. So I was emotionally invested. The fact that it still resonates to me now, at the end of the month, and I read it early on, I mean, it resonated with me. Like, it's still stuck with me. I'm actually excited to read book 3 now. So I do think this book is an improvement on the first book. I followed that up with The Secret World of Briar Rose. So this was an arc that was sent to me from the publisher. This book has not come out yet. No, not yet. I think it comes out this month in April. I gifted my arc to my friends, so I no longer have, like, the date on it anymore. But it was really good. It's a really nice take on the tale of Sleeping Beauty. It's definitely different. I do like that. It is very different, and it goes between the past and the present. So it follows Corin, who I will say that was my biggest hindrance with this book, Corin. Her characterization, she's a little unlikable. You know, she is a little bit unlikable. However, considering that there was so much that has happened to her, and, you know, she definitely see that she suffers from a form of depression, I understand why she is the way she is. So at least she's understandable, and she is somewhat relatable, even if she's not wholly likable. As for Amelia, she also suffers from a form of depression as well, and the dream is her escape world. Like, this is her dream, this is her escape. And when you see her past, you know, everything that leads up to that 100-year mark and why she's in this dream world, you know, is it a curse or isn't it a curse? I really don't want to spoil anything for you, but there's a lot of things that happen that would catch you by surprise, honestly. It's a really interesting take. I like what the author has done with the characters. Yes, of course, Maleficent is in the book, but is she Maleficent? No, that's not her name in the book. Melusine is her name. Oh, I'm so glad I remembered because I forgot it when I was typing my notes. Melusine is her name, and actually not her, they. Melusine is their name. They don't choose a gender, and I think that that's really creative as well, that they just don't define themselves, and as you're reading it, you don't really think about it. It's not until I was reviewing, I'm like, oh yeah, they don't really have a gender. They're always called they. They refer to themselves as they, them. So it's really, really interesting how that's like just in the book and you don't even really think about it. I will say the end when Amelia and Corin have their kiss, I think the romance aspect of their relationship and their dynamic was a little rushed. It wasn't wholly fleshed out. However, for Amelia, it does leave enough of an impact to send her back so that she can change things. It was a moving story, ultimately. I did enjoy it. Enough to like gift it to my friend. I'm like, you know what? This was a really interesting take on Sleeping Beauty, and I thoroughly enjoy that as well. For my friend Jeff's book club, we read This Gilded Abyss by Rebecca Thorne. Yo, this book is basically 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea meets 28 Days Later. Just think about it. You're in a submersible. Submersible. Why does that word keep tripping me up? On their way to the underwater city of the fall, right? And then people start turning into zombies. There's no escape. You are underwater. You are trapped in this thing, right? You're trapped. There's no way out. And these aren't just Walking Dead zombies. No, these are 28 Days Later zombies. Like, they're fast. And they're kind of angry. And you're thinking, oh god, it's the rage virus. And it kind of is in a way, because it's tied to a titan who's not supposed to be alive. That's really the fantasy aspect of it. It has a lot of steampunk vibes as well, including a very wonderful scene with a vibrator. That wasn't cringy. I say that in all seriousness. It was great, actually. The scene with the vibrator. If you read the book for anything, read it for that scene. It was perfect. I thought it was great. So it has a lot of steampunky elements to it. You know, Nyx and Cassandra have kind of a toxic relationship. I will say the book is really fast-paced. It very much reads like it's a survival story, almost. Like it's a fantasy horror book, basically. So you're not really reading for the plot. You're reading for that survival tension. Because, again, they're trapped underwater. They are trapped underwater. They're trying to survive these zombies. They need to figure out a way to get out, to get to the underwater sea. But then, you know, of course they get injured on the way. It's a survival story. You know, again, there is some political nuances, you know, political tension going on in the book. And of course you have that fantastical element coming with the gods and the titan that's supposed to be asleep, but oh, he's no longer asleep underwater. He's alive, and he's kind of responsible for this rage curse thingy, infection, whatever you want to call it. So he's responsible. So now they have to, it's just a survival story, you know? It's fast-paced, it's high tension, there's some steamy scenes in there, and lots of sexual tension, some political upheaval, you know, secrets being kept. It's like if instead of being stuck in the hive, you're stuck in a submarine. Kind of a very fancy submarine that has multiple layers to it, and a ballroom, in fact. Like, it's a very fancy it's probably as big as the hive, I would say. So it has the tension of a Resident Evil movie or game. So it just has you hooked from beginning to end. I read this one in like 2 days. 2 days. I couldn't put it down. And again, it's not really plot heavy, but that's okay, because it makes up for it with that tension and the horror story element. You're reading for their survival story. Like, come on. It was so good. It was so good. I followed that up with Through Our Teeth. This was another arc that was sent to me with the publisher. So it reminded me a lot of And Then There Were None, right? So you have Liv. Liv and her friends decide to kind of lure golden boy, future NBA star Brendan to this house that her mother is building in the middle of nowhere. Fancy house. because they're convinced that he murdered their friend Hope, and everyone's saying Hope just killed herself. She did have a history of depression, and also she's getting a lot of hate online because she released photos of herself beaten by, Golden Boy Brendan, right? Saying, he was abusive, right? And everyone thinks that she just, sorry, brain froze for a second. Everyone thinks that she just killed herself. Well, Liv and her friends who were close to Hope don't agree with that. They think Brendan killed her, right? They think Brendan killed her. So, what happened? They're in this house. There's no cell service. The house is super fancy. Power goes out because there's a thunderstorm. They're locked in. They're trapped. The house turns into a panic room. Why does this sound like a movie? It's reminding me of a movie now that I'm talking about it. And as they're all, secrets are coming alive, and mind you, the boys came by there. Yeah, we saw that his last location was here, so we wanted to come join the fun. Secrets are coming alive. Yeah, power goes out. They're trapped, and suddenly they start getting killed off one by one. Wow. Tell me if that's not, and then there were none vibes right there. It was really, really good. I like the tension. I like how we're going back and forth because we're seeing Liv's memories, right? So she's kind of an unreliable narrator as well. So we're going back and forth between past and present. And I have to say, Hope wasn't always likable as a person. She wasn't always a good friend. She wasn't always a good person. It reminded me a little bit of Pretty Little Liars in a way. But it was still a good story. I enjoyed it. I liked the tension. The killer, not on my list of suspects. And I love it when a story does that. Oh, I read 2 books this month where it did that. I love it when I'm caught off guard. And I love it when it's unsuspecting. Like, that person was not even on my radar, to be perfectly honest with you. Not even on my radar. So when that reveal came, reminded me a little bit of Freaky with that reveal. I'm just like, keep naming more movies that make me think of this book. Not Freaky, Happy Death Day. Sorry. It reminded me of Happy Death Day with that reveal. Freaky was another good movie though, by the way. And I was just like, what? I was completely caught off guard, honestly. But really good book, highly recommend. I do like how it deals with domestic violence, not just women voices, but black girl voices. There is a problem still. Like, I know after the Me Too movement, the problem still exists where victim blaming is still a thing, and the victims are not always believed enough to even warrant an investigation. I am a firm believer of innocent until proven guilty, but I do still believe that investigations do have to take place, and power and money should not determine how the justice system runs, and unfortunately it still does. But we live in a very imperfect world, and we can only continue to start making better choices, and stop victim blaming, honestly. The truth will out, as they say. I followed that up with Dungeon Crawler Carl. Public apology to my bestie Jeff for waiting so long to read it. He was yelling at me a lot. I need you to read this book. And it's not that I didn't want to. I already bought it. I had every intention to read it. The problem is I'm trying to get through all of my books that, I could turn the camera around so that you can see all of my books. Let's see. So there's that. Oh, I don't have a stack over there. But, like, there's a stack there. There's stacks in there. Those. My other cabinet. Okay. There are a lot of books that I need to read. You didn't even get to see inside the closet, okay? There are just a lot of books I need to read. And this doesn't even include my bookcases downstairs. These are all the books that I haven't read, okay? So I'm just trying to get through all the series that I've started. So it was nothing against him, and it was nothing personal. I just have anxiety and panic attacks when I look at the amount of books I have, okay? So I want to read them all, and I just can't seem to read fast enough. In any case, I love this book. Easy, 5 stars. I do highly recommend immersive reading. Even for people who don't really like audiobooks, I promise you, this audiobook will make all the difference because it is absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, hands down, one of the best audiobooks I think I've ever listened to in my life. Just the voice acting. It really brings the humor to life. You really get to see that emotional impact from the characters. I mean, reading it was great. I started off reading it, but I always audiobook as well with my book club picks so that I don't fall behind schedule because I only listen to them or read them on the weekends. I could not put this book down. I did not want to put this book down. So I'd be reading it during my lunch break and I'd be like, earbud in, going back to work, and I would work listening to the audiobook because I didn't want to put it down. And it was just such an easy read for me, honestly. Ooh, nose ring popped up. It was such an easy read for me, honestly. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. No notes. It's perfection. And I can't wait. It's going to become my whole personality. It is. I followed that up with my personal book club pick, Fallen City. Sorry, my allergies today are like really bugging me. Fallen City by Adrienne Young. So lately, Adrienne Young, you know, she started off writing young adult fantasy, and then she went to adult magical realism with fantasy in there, and now this is like her first adult fantasy. I'm personally really excited for this one because I like to see her fantasy. Her fantasy is really, really subtle. Like, it's there, but it's not high fantasy. It just has fantastical elements. This book really leans into a Roman Empire kind of feel with the political aspect of the story, and then with the gods and how they play with the story, or with the play with the characters. They're there. You know that they're there, but they don't really do anything other than with Luca. He has a gold halo, right, on his head, and then at the end Maris gets bestowed this golden bangle that won't come off, right? It's a really, really good and interesting story. I love the tension. I love the rising tension, especially because the book goes back and forth between before and now, and it's a dual POV. And so you get to see the characters and their relationship grow and blossom. You get to see what they mean to each other and why they mean so deeply to one another. It really just was a really well-written book, and that ending, I don't know what's going to happen in the next book. I don't know how this is all going to play out because shit has hit the fan. Shit has hit the fan by the end of this book. You know, you thought the good guys were going to win. Well, not quite. Gods are not done having their fun. Shit has hit the fan. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen with book 2. And I kind of hope that there's a little bit more fantasy in the book and we get to see the gods and their magic play a little bit more. But I don't mind it because I think what Adrienne Young is really good at is characterization and character dynamic and raising the tension between the characters and really using the characters to drive the plot forward. It's still very plot heavy, but the characters are a really good medium for that. I followed that up with Dragon Curse by Elise Kova. So this was my introduction to Elise Kova. I've always wanted to read her books, so of course I would start with the dragon one. It was a little hard to get into. I didn't hate it. I liked it. it was a little hard to get into because there's not, at least Kova just kind of drops you in her world, you know? She just kind of drops you in there, and I don't have a problem with her just dropping us in there. My problem is, okay, we're in this world, but I have no idea what's going on. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head, up until we get to the tribunal, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this world and the way magic works and, like, the history of it. Because there's, like, no world building, really. You're learning through everything from the characters. Like, I'm supposed to know what the font is. I don't know what the font is. I feel like my understanding is it was a wellspring of, like, magic and power, sigils and how they can be used, what it means to be Dragon Cursed, who is Dragon Cursed, why does she think she's Dragon Cursed when everyone else thinks she's Valor Reborn, you know? It was a whole lot of me just trying to struggle and ground myself in the book. And it wasn't until we were finally in the tribunal and we're finally, you know, getting into the grooves of things, and COVID doesn't really explain things later on either, but at least I have a better understanding of the way this world works as the plot develops and as the characters develop. So at least I was getting there. I was getting there. By the end of the book, I knew what was going on, what was what, which is great. I thought it was just, you know, a really good book. I am excited to read book 2. I would like to read book 2. Thanks again to, you know, Red Tower Books, Mayhem Books, for sending me an arc of the book. I really appreciate it. I wanted just a little bit more, you know? A little bit more grounding so I didn't feel so lost, because I was reading it, I thought it was just like reader's fatigue. I was reading it slowly. It probably took me 2 weeks to read this book, when I usually read a book within a week. You know, like 4 to 6 days, typically, give or take. Sometimes 3, you know? It took me a while to, like, really get into it and really find my, you know, stride with it. So, it was a little bit of a struggle. I will say that. But I did ultimately enjoy the ending, so, you know, it did pay off, at the very least. I followed that up with The Time of Contempt. You know what I think my problem is? I think I've just set myself up for really high expectations for the Witcher series. I loved Sword of Destiny and The Last Wish. I loved those two, but those were also collections, right? They weren't like a full-fledged story. They were, you know, basically grimdark fairy tale retellings in a way. So I liked them. They were short, they were sweet, they were impactful. You know, you really got a sense of the characters here. I will say, at least with this one, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I didn't feel lost. I just felt like it dragged. You know, I felt like the pacing was just really, really slow. For the story that was there, it's just like, I wanted it to be a little bit more faster, and I wanted the characters to, like, it's like, okay, come on, move on already, move on. That was me when I was reading it. That I ended up having to audiobook it, because I'm just like, oh my god, move on already. I did love Ciri and Little Horse. I did love her and her unicorn. That was great. I just wanted more from it than I got. I think I've just set myself up with some really, really high expectations for these books. Although even my husband has said that the 2 anthologies were better than the actual series. Even he warned me. He did warn me. I will say that. My husband did warn me. I just chose not to listen. It's very rare that he's right. I should have listened, though, especially because he's played the video games too, and I've only played the first video game. I haven't played the rest of the video games. So he actually knows more about The Witcher than I do, so I should have really listened in that aspect. But, you know, I wanted a better pace than I actually got, so I think I'm just gonna start lowering my expectations a little bit more as I read the rest of the series, because I own all of them. Well, except for the new ones. The new one that came out, which is like a prequel. Maybe I'll read that one. I don't know. We'll see how I feel once I get to the last book, which is not the Lady Lake, the one after that. We'll see how I feel. I followed that up with Beast Becomes Her by Crystal Seitz. Oh my god, this book was amazing. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. I liked it more than her first book, her debut, Inheritance of Scars. It was phenomenal. It follows Edith, and she discovers that she's a berserker. You know? She is a berserker, which means she can turn into a animal of her choosing, right? She has a lot of PTSD, right? So, after an incident at school with a boy physically about to assault her, right? Because she doesn't want to have a relationship, and he's just like, well, what? And she's like, just leave me alone. And he like puts his hands on her. And she goes to slap him, but her hands turn into claws, so it scratches his face up. She's sent to Skallagrim with her little sister, who doesn't have any memory of their parents' death. And their parents' death was, you know, their dad was physically abusive, and it was a murder-suicide. You know, so Edith suffers a lot of PTSD with that. You know, she's trying to be absolutely perfect because she doesn't want to be, you know, caught in the same position that her mother was in. So I do like how this book addresses domestic violence and violence against women. You know, she just is scared, pretty much, and saying no should be enough. Let's be real. Saying no should be enough. But at the school, right when she starts school, what happens? People start dying. People are getting murdered pretty horrifically, actually. Like, their intestines are being ripped out of them. It's pretty gruesome. Gotta love it though. It's like Nevermore, honestly, the school setting. And that's how the book does market itself, like Nevermore meets Norse mythology, and it does. So, because at the school you have more berserkers, you have witches, you have hunters, and then you used to have seers, right? But then a tragedy happened like 30 years ago. A tragedy that also coincidentally involved Edith's father. So there's a lot of history to unpack. It's really, really well written and well structured. I liked the rising tension, and I like how Edith learns to heal. You know, she takes really good care of her little sister Bee. Her adoptive parents are also really, really great as well. They're very supportive. They're just kind of thrown into this world. They're like, oh, but mind you, they've been raising the kids together for almost a decade, so they're attached to these kids. And they discover, like, oh, okay, magic is a thing. All right, well, we're gonna be here for you. They're pretty great, actually, as adoptive parents go. They're very understanding. They're taking everything in stride, even at the end when they are attacked by a bunch of berserkers. I liked the story a lot. I love how Edith really comes into her own and addresses her past trauma and begins to heal from it as well. And the magical fantasy aspect of the story, I knew it was him. I was reading it, I'm like, it's gotta be this one. It's gotta be this person. Gotta be. Everyone else, I'm like, that's too obvious. That's a red herring. It's gotta be. It was really, really well done, honestly. I still loved it though. It was hands down 5-star read for me. Amazing. I followed it up with I Killed the King. Also another arc from the publisher. So yes, Beast Becomes Her was also a gift from the publisher. And so was I Killed the King. So, think Knives Out meets fantasy. You got 6 teens. You got a princess. You got a prince. You've got a hired assassin, a beast trainer, and then a royal guard who happens to be in love with the prince. And the prince happens to love them too, right? Unrequited, or not unrequited, but they haven't expressed their feelings for each other. They're in a room when the king comes in. And then what happens? Well, darkness falls, and then all of a sudden the king is dead. So it's kind of a clue. right? Oh yeah, Clue, Knives Out. I love Clue. And they're trying to figure out, you did it, you did it, you did it, you know? And there's a lot of things that point to each one of them having a motive to kill the king. It was really, really well done, honestly. Again, this is the other one. I did not, the killer, not even on my list of suspects. Not on my list of suspects, not at all. It was really well done. I liked the tension. You do go between all of the characters, honestly. So sometimes I did feel a little bit lost because the main characters, they were easy to follow, but then the role was played by some of the small minor characters. I was like, wait, what's your role in this again? So that's where it kind of lost me a little bit, trying to follow the circles of the main characters, right? I did like the fast pace. I liked the tension. The ending caught me off guard. And the killer, again, another one who wasn't even on my list of suspects. Not even on my radar, honestly. So ultimately, it was a really, really good book, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you again to the publisher for sending it to me. It really did catch me off guard. That's the truth. I followed that up with The Last Ember. This is the son that I read nightly to my son. This is the book I read nightly to my son. And he also didn't enjoy it as much as we had hoped. I didn't enjoy it as much as I had hoped as well. It's not that it's a bad book. It's not. I think maybe he's 6. He's turning 7 this year. I think it was maybe a little too old for him. Just in terms of pacing, and also Ava Alexander, she was it's like she was trying to be Hermione, but she was obnoxious. Like, there was nothing redeeming really about her early on. She's just kind of a know-it-all and thinks she's better than everyone else and doesn't really and she's constantly shooting other people's opinions down. It's just like, why don't you try listening, Why don't you just be nice? She was a little unlikable, and she is one of our main characters. Dusty I loved. I loved Dusty. But Ava Alexander, she just wasn't that nice of a character until after the Aramander hatches. That's when she has all of her character growth right in that ending scene. So I think the pacing just drags a little bit, especially for a kid's book. It was fun to read. My son enjoyed it, but we both didn't enjoy it as much as we had hoped to enjoy it, which is unfortunate. My son's like, I don't really understand what's happening in this book, because it was really a slow pace. It didn't really hold his attention as much as some of the other books did. He also was upset that there wasn't a map at the beginning of the book. I had the arc, so there's probably a map in the physical book, but I had the arc of it, so that my friend Gina gifted to me. She's like, yeah, so you can read to Squirt. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And we did. So he was kind of bummed that there was no map, because he loves looking at the maps in the books. He loves looking at the maps. So it was just, not our favorite book, unfortunately. I personally wanted a little bit more from it. It did bore me sometimes. There were some parts of the story that did kind of bore me, and it sucked that Ava Alexander just wasn't a wholly likable character. I think Parnassus was a really good villain. He's absolutely despicable, and I like the tone. Don't get me wrong, there are some tones, where it addresses the reader. I love when books do that, when they kind of break the fourth wall and address the reader. And it's like, Parnassus is not a character who will be redeemed later in this book. So I love the interludes of the story. I think those are probably my favorite parts, because you really got to see the tone of the book talking to you, the reader. Like, those were fun. But otherwise, it just dragged a little too much. It was a little too slow. That's what I'm saying. Maybe it was just too, old for my son. The characters are like 11, 12, but still. It just didn't hold his attention or his interest as much as I had hoped, and it didn't hold mine either. Usually when I read kid books to him, I like the ones where I have a hard time putting it down myself. And we just started reading Underwild, River of Spirits, and that's one that I'm hooked with. Like, that's one where last night I may have read 2 extra chapters while after he went to sleep. Shh, don't tell him, okay? But those are the types of books that also do tend to hold his interest a little bit more. So I don't think I'm going to read the sequel to The Last Ember, but, you know, we'll see where life takes us. We shall see. I followed that up with Unending Look. Okay, look. I waited 2 years for this book. I waited 2 years for this sequel, and it was worth every single moment. Oh my god. So this is a sequel to Unseelie by Evelise Hausman, and what I love about it is, you know, your main character is neurodivergent, right? And that's because the author is. I love seeing neurodivergent characters become main characters, and not just that, become heroes. I think this book was amazing. I can't really remember if Isolde has her own POV. I don't think she did have her own POV in the first book, honestly. I think it was just Celie. Yeah. Her name is Iselia, but her nickname is Celie because she was thought to be a changeling, right? Because her and her sister, they're twins, but they're not really twins. They're changelings, right? There's a whole lot to unpack with that. There's a whole lot that's revealed with that I really don't want to spoil for you. It was good. It was like 4.5 stars, honestly. It was worth the wait. I was not disappointed at all. I love Celie's relationship with Ray's and how he's all kinds of green flags. Let me tell you, he is all kinds of green flags. I love him. I love their relationship. I love how it blossoms here. If you're thinking they don't get a happy ending, well, don't worry. They have a happy ending. I just loved how the characters grew. I love how they developed. I love how Iselia really comes into her own, and he's old too. I love that we get to see that sisterly dynamic in this book with both of their POVs because they both separate and go on separate adventures that of course tie together. They have to get the Unseelie Queen and the Seelie Queen to reopen, you know, like the portals to the human world and stop the evil elf Gossamer, you know. It's a really, really good story. I love the storytelling. I love the characterization. I like how we went back and forth between Isolde and Sally's character. And I liked seeing the character growth for both of them, honestly. And you know what? I think this was a really good representation of neurodivergent, of being neurodivergent. There's a way to say it properly that I'm not really saying it, but I really do think it's a really good way to represent that community. People who are neurodivergent. I think it's nice to see themselves in roles that are empowering and powerful while also still kind of struggling with their individual struggles, because of course it's different for everyone. You know, it is different for everyone, and I think it was really good to see how Iselia struggles and how she kind of overcomes some of them, not just by herself but with a really good support system in her own found family. Last but not least, Cardcaptor Sakura, volume 6. I think it was 6. I think I read 5 last. I read 1 a month, so if I could just log into my tablet here. Haha, I was right, 6. What can I say that I haven't said before? It's amazing. I love Cardcaptor Sakura. I love the artwork. I cannot wait to gift these because I have the collector's editions. I can't wait to gift them to my kids when they get older. I think they're gonna love them, honestly. We're rewatching Cardcaptor Sakura right now. We're on season 3. I need Clear Card season 2 to start happening. Okay. I don't know who out there needs to see this, but y'all need to start making it happen. Y'all announced it like 2 years ago. Make it happen. In any case, I loved the artwork. I love the characterization. I love seeing them grow and bond. I think it's really interesting that Mei Ling, I didn't know she was a character only created for the anime and not for, and doesn't exist in the manga. You know, I haven't seen her. I'm on the arc with Ariel. Ariel. Not really sure how to pronounce the name. But I love seeing the characters kind of just grow and flourish, and I love seeing Sakura come into her power. I think she's pretty wonderful. She's adorable. I'm adding like a card catch of Sakura aspect to my magical girl tattoo. It's gonna go on my leg. I can't wait to get it done. In any case, thank you all for tuning in. These were the 15 books that I read this March. Stay tuned for my TBR coming up soon. And on that note, thank you all once again for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with my book with my friends. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.